I was sitting in my studio apartment on a cold Tuesday morning in November, staring at the Thanksgiving invitation I'd just received. Not the kind you'd hope for from your only daughter. No warm words, no "we'd love to have you, Dad." Just a text message that read, "Thanksgiving at the club this year. $85 per plate. Let me know if you can afford it." My daughter Jessica and her husband Marcus had been treating me like this for 3 years now. Ever since my wife Catherine passed away from cancer, leaving me alone in this modest place in normal San Diego neighborhood. They didn't know the truth. They thought I was just Richard Morrison, the retired civil engineer who'd squandered his life building bridges and roads, living off a modest pension in an 800-square-foot apartment. They had no idea about the $5.2 million in my investment accounts, or the $3 million in startup shares that were about to go public, or the 14 rental properties generating $12,000 a month in passive income. Catherine and I had made a decision 30 years ago, when Jessica was still young. We'd watched too many families torn apart by money, seen too many children who only called when they needed something. So we lived modestly. We drove practical cars, took reasonable vacations, and never flaunted our wealth. We wanted to know that people loved us for who we were, not what we had. Before Catherine died, she made me promise something. We were sitting in her hospital room, and she took my hand with what little strength she had left. "Richard," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "promise me you'll test her. I don't trust Marcus. I see how he looks at you, like you're beneath him. And Jessica, our sweet girl, she's changing. Promise me you'll know for sure before you leave her everything we built." I promised. And for 3 years, I'd kept that promise. The way Jessica had changed after marrying Marcus Blake was heartbreaking. He was an investment banker, the kind of man who measured everyone's worth by their portfolio. Within a year of their wedding, I noticed the shift. Jessica started making excuses not to visit. She'd cancel our monthly dinners at the last minute. When we did meet, Marcus would dominate the conversation, talking about his deals, his clients, his luxury car lease. I remember one particular evening about 2 years ago, I'd invited them to my apartment for dinner. Jessica looked around with barely concealed embarrassment when she arrived. "Dad, you really need to update this place," she said, eyeing my simple furniture and basic kitchen. "It's so depressing." Marcus had been worse. He walked around like he was inspecting a condemned building. "Richard, have you considered moving to a senior living facility? They have some affordable options for people in your, situation." My situation. If only they knew. But I held my tongue. I kept playing the role. The struggling retiree, grateful for whatever crumbs of attention they threw my way. I wanted to see how far they'd go, how low they'd sink. Last month, things escalated. I'd called Jessica to ask if Marcus could give me a ride to a hospital appointment. I had a perfectly good car in storage, but they didn't know that. "Dad, we're busy," Jessica had said, her tone clipped and impatient. "Can't you just take an Uber?" That's what they're for. An Uber. To a medical appointment. Her father, supposedly struggling financially, and she couldn't spare an hour to drive me. But the real turning point came 3 weeks ago. I'd gone to their penthouse downtown for what I thought would be a pleasant Sunday brunch. They'd invited me, which was rare enough that I should have known something was off. When I arrived, Marcus was in the middle of a phone call, pacing near the floor-to-ceiling windows, with their view of the bay. "No, Bob, I can't make the golf trip to Palm Springs," Marcus was saying. "Yeah, family obligation. My father-in-law, you know how it is." "No, trust me, I'd rather be anywhere else." I stood in the doorway, frozen. Jessica was in the kitchen, and she hadn't noticed me yet. Marcus finished his call and turned, seeing me for the first time. He didn't even have the grace to look embarrassed. "Richard, I didn't hear you come in." He walked over and gave me one of those hollow handshakes, the kind where someone's already thinking about being somewhere else. "Jessica's just finishing up the frittata. Have a seat." The brunch was painful. Every topic of conversation somehow circled back to money. Their upcoming trip to Banff, which cost more than most people's monthly salary. The new Tesla Marcus was considering. Their investment portfolio that was finally breaking 7 figures. 7 figures! I almost laughed. They were so proud of their success, their wealth, their status. They had no idea that their portfolio was pocket change compared to what I'd built over 4 decades of careful investing. But then, as I was getting ready to leave, I heard something that changed everything. I'd gone to use the bathroom, and on my way back, I heard Jessica on the phone in their bedroom. The door was slightly open, and her voice carried clearly. "I know, Sarah. I know," she was saying. "It's just so frustrating. Every month, he's asking for something. Can you give me a ride? Can you help with this? Can you help with that? And Marcus is right. He should have saved better. He had his whole life to plan for retirement. I can't be expected to support him now." There was a pause as her friend responded. "Honestly?" Jessica laughed, but it was a cold sound. "Part of me just wishes he'd hurry up and die so we could finally get the inheritance and be done with it. I know that sounds terrible, but Sarah, you don't understand. He's like this weight around my neck. Every time I see him in that depressing apartment wearing those old clothes, it just reminds me of where I came from. Marcus's family has money, real money, and then there's my dad, the struggling engineer." I stood there in the hallway, my hand on the wall to steady myself. My own daughter, wishing I was dead, so she could get an inheritance she thought didn't exist. That's when I knew. Catherine had been right. It was time for the real test. I left without saying goodbye. Over the next week, I carefully planned everything with my attorney, Jonathan Kim. Jonathan had been handling my affairs for 20 years. He knew every detail of my financial situation, and he understood what I was about to do. "Are you absolutely sure about this, Richard?" he asked me during our meeting in his office. "There's no coming back from this kind of test. I heard my daughter wish for my death, Jonathan. I think I need to know exactly who she is before I leave her anything." He nodded slowly. "All right, let's go over the plan." The plan was simple, but devastating. I was going to fake a serious illness, not cancer, that felt too close to how Catherine died, but something expensive, something that would require significant medical bills, something that would test whether Jessica loved me or just wanted my imagined inheritance. 2 weeks later, I called Jessica. I made my voice sound weak, tired. "Sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something. Can you come over?" To my surprise, she agreed. Maybe the urgency in my voice worried her, or maybe Marcus pushed her to check on the inheritance situation. She arrived the next evening, and I'd set the stage carefully. I had medical pamphlets on the table, a bottle of prescription medication, empty and turned, so the label showed. I'd even borrowed a walker from a neighbor and left it by the door. "Dad!" Jessica's eyes went wide when she saw the walker. "What's going on?" I gestured for her to sit down. "Jessica, I need to be honest with you. I've been diagnosed with a serious heart condition. The doctors say I need surgery, but even with Medicare, the costs are substantial. I'm looking at about $40,000 in out-of-pocket expenses." I watched her face carefully. For just a moment, just a split second, I saw something flash in her eyes. Not concern, not worry. It was calculation. $40,000? She repeated. "Dad, that's a lot of money. Do you have savings?" "Some," I said carefully. "But you know how it is. The apartment, the bills, everything adds up. I was hoping maybe you and Marcus might be able to help. Not all of it, but maybe a few thousand to help me get started with the treatments." Jessica sat back in her chair. She looked at the medical pamphlets, at me, at the walker. "Dad, I don't know what to say. That's a huge amount. Marcus and I, we have our own expenses. The penthouse, the car payments, our lifestyle. We're not exactly swimming in extra cash." "I understand," I said quietly. "I just thought, since you're my only child, since your mother and I helped you through law school." "That was different," Jessica interrupted. "That was an investment in my future. This is just throwing money at a medical system that's going to take and take and take. Dad, have you considered that maybe this is just nature taking its course?" I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Nature taking its course? I don't mean it like that," she said quickly. But I could see she absolutely meant it like that. "I just mean, you're 65 years old. You've had a good life. Maybe expensive surgery isn't the answer. Maybe you should focus on quality of life with whatever time you have left. Whatever time I have left. I see, I said. So you won't help? Jessica stood up, clearly uncomfortable now. Dad, I need to talk to Marcus about this. It's a big ask. I'll call you, okay? She didn't call, but a week later, Marcus did. Richard, Jessica told me about your situation. His voice was brisk, businesslike. Look, I'm going to be straight with you. We can't afford to help with this medical situation, but I want you to know. We've been talking, and when the time comes, we'll make sure you have a dignified funeral. We'll handle all those arrangements, and we'll make sure any remaining debts are settled from whatever estate you leave behind. Any remaining debts. From whatever estate I leave behind. They were already planning for my death. Already thinking about what they'd inherit from the humble studio apartment and the supposedly meager savings of a retired civil engineer. I appreciate that, Marcus, I said, my voice carefully neutral. I'm sure whatever I leave behind will help cover things. Exactly, Marcus said, and I could hear the relief in his voice. We'll take care of everything. You just focus on your health. Well, as best you can. After I hung up, I sat in my apartment for a long time. The same apartment where Catherine and I had lived modestly while our investments grew. The same apartment where we'd laughed about our secret wealth, about the life we were building for our daughter. Catherine would have been heartbroken, but she also would have understood why this test was necessary. The next morning, I called Jonathan Kim. It's time to move forward with the new will. You're sure? He asked one more time. I'm sure. Over the next month, I worked with Jonathan to restructure everything. The new will was simple and brutal. 95% of my estate would go to various charities, organizations that Catherine and I had supported quietly over the years. The Children's Hospital, where she'd volunteered. The Engineering Scholarship Fund at the university where I'd taught evening classes for decades. The animal shelter where we'd adopted our dogs. The remaining 5% would go into a trust fund for Tommy, Jessica's 10-year-old son, and my grandson. But there were conditions. Tommy wouldn't receive access to the trust until he turned 25, and only if he could demonstrate strong moral character through a series of evaluations by independent trustees. Tommy was the one bright spot in all of this. Jessica and Marcus were so focused on their social climbing that they barely paid attention to him. They'd shipped him off to expensive boarding schools and summer camps. But a few times a year, Tommy would call me in secret, just to talk. He'd tell me about school, about the books he was reading, about how he felt lonely sometimes. Once, about 6 months ago, Tommy had visited me without his parents knowing. He'd saved his allowance and taken a bus across town. "Grandpa," he'd said, pulling $20 from his pocket, "Mom says you don't have much money. I want you to have this." $20. From a 10-year-old boy, while his parents, making well over $300,000 a year combined, couldn't spare a penny for my supposed medical bills. That money was still in my desk drawer. I'd never spent it. After the new will was finalized, Jonathan and I sat in his office, looking over the documents. "There's one more thing I need you to do," I said. "When the time comes, I want you to deliver a letter to Jessica personally. I'll write it, but I need you to hand it to her when she's reading the will." Jonathan nodded. "This is going to devastate her." "She devastated me first," I said quietly. "She wished for my death, Jonathan, her own father, because she thought there might be a few $1,000s in inheritance to pay off her luxury lifestyle. She deserves to know exactly what she lost, and why." That evening, I sat down and wrote the letter. It took me 3 hours and several drafts. I wanted it to be clear, not cruel, honest, not vindictive. A final lesson from a father to a daughter who'd forgotten what really mattered. "Dear Jessica, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. And by now, you've learned the truth about my estate. I need you to understand something. Your mother and I were never poor. We were never struggling. When I retired from my engineering career, we had already built significant wealth through careful investing in real estate. By the time your mother passed away, our net worth was over $8 million. You never knew this because we chose not to tell you. We wanted to know that you loved us for who we were, not what we had. We wanted to teach you the value of hard work, of integrity, of family bonds that transcend money. For 3 years after your mother died, I lived modestly. I pretended to struggle. I watched as you and Marcus treated me with increasing disdain. I listened as you made excuses not to see me. I felt the sting when you refused to give me a ride to a medical appointment. But the real test came when I told you I was sick. When I asked for help with medical bills, you refused. Marcus talked about planning my funeral and settling my debts. And you, my daughter, told your friend that you wished I would hurry up and die so you could collect an inheritance you thought didn't exist. I heard you say that, Jessica. I was standing in your hallway, and I heard every word. I want you to know that I didn't do this out of anger. I did it out of love, the love a father has for his daughter, even when she's lost her way. I hope that someday you'll understand that the greatest inheritance I could give you isn't money. It's a lesson. Money doesn't change people. It reveals who they've been all along. 95% of the estate your mother and I built has gone to organizations that make the world better. The Children's Hospital, the Engineering Scholarship Fund, the Animal Shelter, places where compassion still matters more than cash. The remaining 5% is held in trust for Tommy, not for you. For my grandson, who once gave me $20 from his allowance because he thought I needed it. Who calls me just to talk, not to ask for something. Who might, if we're lucky, grow up to understand what you've forgotten. That character matters more than bank accounts. Tommy will receive his inheritance when he turns 25, provided he demonstrates the kind of person his grandmother and I hoped you would become. You are still my daughter, Jessica. I still love you. But love doesn't mean leaving you money you didn't earn and don't deserve. Love means hoping you'll learn from this, that you'll look at Marcus, at your choices, at the person you've become, and decide to change. If you ever find your way back to the values your mother and I tried to teach you, my attorney has instructions. There's a small fund, $100,000, that you can access if you complete 2 years of volunteer work at a nonprofit organization. Not for the tax deduction, not for the social credit, but because you genuinely want to help people. I hope you make that choice. I hope you prove me wrong about who you've become. With love, even now. Dad. I sealed the letter and gave it to Jonathan. She'll hate me for this, I said. Maybe, Jonathan replied. Or maybe it'll be the wake-up call she needs. 3 months later, I decided it was time for the final act. I couldn't fake being sick forever, and frankly, I was tired of the charade. I was 65 years old, healthy and financially secure. I wanted to start actually living instead of just testing. I called Jessica one last time. Sweetheart, I wanted you to know that I've decided against the surgery. The doctors say my quality of life would be poor anyway. I'm going to spend whatever time I have left doing things I enjoy. Oh, Dad, Jessica said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. Relief that she wouldn't have to deal with my medical bills. Relief that the inheritance was coming sooner rather than later. I think that's very brave of you. Thank you, honey. There is one thing, though. I've updated my will. Just want to make sure everything's in order. Of course, Jessica said quickly. That's very responsible. I'll send you a copy of the attorney's contact information, just in case. Sure, Dad, sure. That was the last time we spoke. 2 weeks later, I withdrew a substantial amount of cash from one of my accounts. Not enough to make a dent in my overall wealth, but enough to fund an adventure. I'd always wanted to see more of Canada, to travel without worrying about budgets or modest appearances. Catherine and I had dreamed of it, but we'd never made the time. I booked a trip to Vancouver Island, then the Rockies. I planned to spend months just exploring, staying in nice hotels, eating at good restaurants, living the life I'd denied myself for 3 years. Before I left, I stopped by Jessica and Marcus's building one last time. I left an envelope with the doorman, addressed to them. Inside was a single photograph I'd paid a professional photographer to take. Me, standing on the deck of a luxury charter boat in the Vancouver harbor, champagne glass in hand, mountains in the background, looking healthier and happier than I'd been in years. On the back of the photo, I'd written just 4 words. The test is over. I also included a card with Jonathan Kim's contact information and a note. For questions about the estate, contact my attorney. Then I drove to the airport and didn't look back. According to Jonathan, who called me 3 days later, Jessica and Marcus had shown up at his office within hours of receiving the photograph. They were confused, then angry, then desperate as Jonathan explained the situation and handed Jessica the letter. She screamed, "Richard," Jonathan told me. Actually screamed. Marcus tried to get legal, talking about contesting the will, but I shut that down fast. Everything's airtight. What about Tommy? I asked. I reached out to him separately, as you requested. Explained that there was a trust fund waiting for him, but only if he stays on the right path. That kid's got a good head on his shoulders, Richard. He cried when I told him it was because of the $20. I smiled. Maybe something good would come from all this after all. It's been 6 months now. I'm currently in Banff, staying in a beautiful lodge with a view of the mountains. I've made friends with other travelers, joined a local photography club, even started volunteering at a community center, teaching basic engineering principles to kids. Jessica has called 12 times. I haven't answered. She sent emails, long messages that swing between anger and apology. Marcus has tried too. His message is more calculating, suggesting ways to work out this misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding. They revealed exactly who they are, and I responded accordingly. But last week, I received a letter. Not from Jessica, from Tommy. It was handwritten, 6 pages long, and it made me cry for the first time since Catherine died. Dear Grandpa, Mr. Kim told me about the trust fund. I don't really understand all the details, but he said it's because I was kind to you, because of the $20. I need to tell you something. I gave you that money because I love you, not because I thought I'd get more back. Just because you're my grandpa, and you're always nice to me, even when Mom and Dad are busy. Mr. Kim also told me what Mom and Dad did, how they treated you. I'm really sorry, Grandpa. That's not right. You shouldn't treat people you love like that. Mom's been really upset since you left. She cries a lot. Dad's angry all the time. They fight about money and about you. It's not very nice at home right now. But I wanted to tell you something. I don't want to be like them when I grow up. I want to be like you, Mr. Kim says if I work hard and stay good, I can learn about investing and charity and all the things you did with your money. That sounds really cool. Also, he said there's a condition about demonstrating moral character for 15 years. That means I have to be good until I'm 25. I'm going to do it, Grandpa. Not because of the money, because I want you to be proud of me. Can I come visit you sometime? I've been saving my allowance. I have almost $300 now. I know that's not enough for a plane ticket, but maybe someday? I love you, Grandpa. I hope you're happy wherever you are. Love, Tommy. I've read that letter probably 50 times. And yesterday, I called Jonathan with new instructions. I want to set up a separate fund for Tommy's visits, I told him. Nothing that would spoil him, but enough that he can come see me during school breaks. And I want to start an education savings plan in his name. He shouldn't have to wait until 25 to know his grandfather cares about him. Richard, you're going soft, Jonathan said, but I could hear the smile in his voice. Maybe, I agreed. Or maybe I'm just choosing to invest in the one family member who actually has a heart. Next week, Tommy's flying out to join me for a week in the mountains. Just him and his grandpa. I'm going to teach him about hiking and photography and maybe, just maybe, about the difference between being wealthy and being rich. Being wealthy is about money in the bank. Being rich is about the relationships you build, the lives you touch, the person you choose to be when nobody's watching. Jessica had the chance to be rich. She chose to chase wealth instead. Tommy's got that same choice ahead of him. But unlike his mother, he's starting with a guide. Someone who learned the hard way that the most valuable inheritance you can leave isn't money. It's character. And that's worth more than $8 million any day of the week. I'm sitting on the balcony of my lodge right now, watching the sun set over the Rockies. Tomorrow, Tommy arrives. I've got a whole week planned. Hiking, stargazing, teaching him to skip stones on the lake. Simple things. Free things. Things that matter. My phone buzzes. Another message from Jessica. I glance at it. Dad, please, Can we talk? I know I made mistakes. I know I failed your test, but I'm still your daughter. Doesn't that count for something? I stare at that message for a long time. And maybe, just maybe, I feel something soften in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but possibility. Catherine used to say that everyone deserves a chance at redemption. That love means leaving the door open, even when someone's hurt you. I think about the letter I left for Jessica, about the $100,000 she can access if she volunteers for 2 years, about the possibility that she might actually change. I type out a response. Jessica, yes, being my daughter counts for something. It means I left you an opportunity to prove you're more than your worst choices. Read the letter again. Really read it. The door isn't locked, but you have to choose to walk through it. I hit send. Then I put the phone away and pour myself a glass of wine. Tomorrow, Tommy arrives. My grandson, who gave me $20 because he thought I needed it. Who wants to be like his grandpa, not like his parents. Who has 15 years to prove that character matters more than DNA. And somewhere in San Diego, Jessica is reading my message, making a choice about who she wants to be. I don't know how this story ends. Maybe Jessica never changes. Maybe she stays bitter and angry, trapped in her marriage to Marcus, forever resentful that the inheritance went to Charity and her son. Or maybe, just maybe, she takes the harder road. The road that leads through 2 years of volunteer work, of helping people with no expectation of reward, of slowly remembering the values her mother and I tried to teach her. Either way, I've made my peace with it. I chose to test her, and she failed. But I also chose to leave her a path back. Not an easy path, not a cheap path, but a path nonetheless. The sun disappears behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. Somewhere in the distance, an elk calls out to its herd, and I raise my glass to the sky, to Catherine, to the life we built and the lessons we learned, and I whisper, "The test is over, sweetheart. Now we wait and see if she learned anything from it." The wind carries my words away into the gathering darkness. And somewhere, in the distance, I can almost hear Catherine's laugh, proud and sad and hopeful all at once. Because that's what love is, in the end. Not the money you leave behind, not the possessions you accumulate, but the lessons you teach, the choices you offer, and the hope that somehow, against all odds, the people you love will choose to be better. Even if they have to learn the hard way, just like I did.